Hi, Dr. Nugent. So for my final, I chose questions 4, 5, and 6. I'll start with 6 since that's the one that we all had to answer. So for how has an understanding of the NCTM standards, process, and content changed my thinking about the teaching of mathematics? I definitely think that the standards, process, and content kind of act as the backbone for teachers to be able to say, okay, these are the standards in my lesson that I want to teach and that I want my students to learn, and then in the end they can kind of look back and say, oh, my students definitely met these standards, or oh, I kind of fell short. So for the process standards, which are problem solving, reasoning improves, connections, communication, and representation, those are all the different ways you can kind of solve a problem or the processes that you can use. And then the content standards, algebra, geometry, measurement, data analysis and probability, and numbers and operations, they're all connected to the Common Core standards. So for example, I was just on the Common Core website and I looked at a third grade standards, and I looked at measurement. So then it gave all the different process standards for the Common Core that could be used for third grade in measurement. For example, problem solving was given by using estimation for measurement, stuff like that. So the content and process standards are in the Common Core, and it's definitely important for us to understand that they all connect. And I think, again, that by focusing on the content standards, those are kind of the different areas that we should be teaching, and then the process standards are how we're going to teach them the different processes. So it's important as future educators that we understand those and that we're able to convey that to our students. So for question number 4, what have I learned in terms of adaptations and addressing the needs of special education students? Through this class and others, I've definitely learned different ways to help students with special needs. I can explain it better by thinking of different examples of students with special needs. So for a student that has some sort of learning disability, ADD, ADHD, they're hyperactive, I think it's important for them to work with students who aren't super loud so that it kind of mellows them out. For a student that maybe learns slower, I think it's important for them to work with students who aren't super advanced but are just a couple steps above their ability level, so that those students can kind of help them out, because it's unrealistic to think that every classroom is going to have a special education aid. For a student that may have a fine motor skills problem, when working with manipulatives, a teacher, instead of giving them, the really tiny square blocks, they could give them the base 10 blocks so they're bigger and easier to work with, just so that the students can kind of grab them better and not, be picking up such little pieces. For gifted students, I think that it's not okay for a teacher to just give them extra work. I think that a teacher should have them maybe dive into a topic more instead of just showing their answer, explain how they got it, how it connects to different topics in math, how it connects to different areas, whether it be science or social studies or whatever, how it connects to different subjects. I think it's important to just ask those students to go a step further, not just give them extra work. I'm going to continue to use these different ideas in my future classroom because, I'm always going to be faced with students who have some sort of special need or are gifted, and it's important as an educator that I know how to handle that in my classroom. And I think that everything that I've learned in this class and my other education classes is definitely going to be helpful for conveying that to my students and for handling those situations. The activity file was definitely helpful with this. It showed the different adaptations I would use for gifted and special needs students. So if you want to reference that, it shows the different things for those specific activities that I would do. So that'll show my understanding of that. For question 5, 2 ideas that I've taken from this class that I want to put in my future classroom is 1, the NCTM and Common Core standards. I think those are important to put at the beginning of every lesson and to really focus on in order to properly teach those things, because then at the end you can look back as a teacher and say, okay, did I cover this? Do my students understand? It's a way to cover all of your bases and make sure that the students understand what's being taught. And then after your assessment, you can look back at the standards and say, okay, did I meet these properly? The other topic that I'm definitely going to take back to my classroom is how to evaluate properly. Through all the different assignments, especially the last one, the problem-based learning, we looked at different students' work from just our class alone and evaluated their problems. And instead of just looking at one or two criteria like I did at the beginning of the semester, I now can evaluate over a ton of different criteria, whether it was age appropriate, is it challenging enough, is it going to make sense to the students, is it worded properly, does it cover different process standards and different content standards and all those sorts of things. So that's definitely something that I'm going to take back to my classroom on how to evaluate my students. Okay, I hope I answered all of the questions properly. Thanks for listening.